before we start, I'll go over a few points and cover some issues or comments that we found here in the survey, or that Joel has categorized. I've placed on your tables copies of these, and we'll begin that in a moment. What I wanted to do, though, was sort of present sort of a word of caution. You know, I'm actually very different for me not speaking in front of a screen without PowerPoints, and it's kind of liberating. But you know, it's brought such order to my life. It's really been helpful at family meetings, and I think my children have all enjoyed the colors as well. I also wanted to say that I have an essential tremor, so if you see my hand shaking, it's not out of fear. We're absolutely pleased to be here, and really appreciated the great work that the State Library has done to put this together, the great attendance, and also just the wonderful staff that WayMark has had an opportunity to work with. My name is Mark Nolen. I did speak with you just briefly, some of you yesterday. I am a graduate of library school at the University of Illinois. I've been in e-content and online information systems with such companies as LexisNexis, by example, since about 1987. And have done an online information system startup at Johns Hopkins University. For those of you in academic libraries, that's known as Project Muse, which is a collection of journals in the arts, humanities, and social sciences. So I was the business manager for that startup. One of the things that I wanted to say is that on these sheets, the qualitative results that Joel has classified for us, there is always danger in looking at a comment that is outside sort of the responses that other individuals may have. And that is that very often we will act on the negative without thinking through the entire situation. That is, when my children come home with a report card and there's red ink on it, I seem to spend more time looking at the red ink than all the other great comments that have taken place. And when one looks at a Z flower, and there may be some of those left, hopefully you had a chance to take those sheets from yesterday. Very often you'll see, you know, a lot of green or some, which are very positive, and in the outliers, on some occasions, you'll see a negative. Even if a situation occurs where there is just a tremendous amount of green, highly positive response, and there may be a very, very small number that is negative, don't disregard the negative. Think about it and plan for it. An example of this is that in the research that we were doing at the University of Illinois that actually created the Z-flower, we had an 89% response rate on the desire of all of the stakeholders in the community, about 20 different stakeholder types, to build a wind farm in Champaign County. Wind farms are very popular here in Illinois. 89% of the responses were positive. The outliers, 4 of them, were either negative or highly negative. Those involved in the project, and I was one of them, said, hey, we have 89% positive, let's build this thing. Don't underestimate the power of the 11% negative. So each respondent has some level of relevancy that indicates a level of power, a level of dependency, how dependent is the project on their involvement to move forward, a sense of urgency. If they're not urgent about the project and you are, it may not go forward, particularly if they have a high power profile in what you need to get done. For some of us, it may be legislators looking for funding. So don't disregard the negative responses. Do know about them and plan for them accordingly and move forward wisely. What Joel has done is with this sheet that are on your tables, I'll just highlight a few of these, and then what we will do is actually have each of you, I'll ask you a question after we've gone over a few of these, and have you work in the group, and we will do fairly much what we did yesterday, or as Joel did yesterday. And that is, get your input on a final question that I have for you. I believe Deborah, who is a much better typist and keyboarder than I am, thanks to this right hand, is going to be able to help me this morning grab notes quickly. I can't type as fast as Joel does, and he talks to people and grabs their comments very quickly. So some highlights from the survey, and these were the free-form comments that people were able to make. What is your vision of success for Illinois libraries providing community information on ASD? What would success look like? Well, one of the things that Joel thought was interesting among the libraries as information resources was that first comment: success would be a comprehensive dissemination of information on ASD, and I think that was sort of commented on a great deal yesterday. Another one that he highlighted was, I do think libraries should be responsible for specialized groups beyond basic disability accommodations. It is the responsibility of the individual. I do not think libraries should be responsible for specialized groups beyond basic disability accommodations. It is the responsibility of the individual to adapt to the environment. Enabling community integration, he had highlighted acclimating people with ASD into the community. Utilizing library resources, he highlighted to provide more welcoming and informed environment for families, caregivers, and patrons. And when we break, I'd urge you to look through the balance of some of these. On the back of the first page, we have a statewide structure. Communities sharing resources and information among themselves without a sense of competition. And actually, as I think about that one comment, it could be that some formation, as some of the placement today in groups is based on geolocation, adjoining counties. I wonder, there could be some tension, particularly if there is competition for funding that is involved. So without a sense of competition would be a wonderful goal. Bottom line, the library would become a hub of information gathering and support for individuals and families affected by ASD. It would be a known resource to educators, healthcare professionals, community members, families, and individuals. And it would also be a space easily assessed with sensory issues addressed. There is some research being conducted at the University of Illinois by Professor Dina McDonough. She is a professor in fine and applied arts. They do a great deal of work, though, right now. Some of her research and her students have to do with website design and what she refers to as empathic design. Designing from the perspective of the user, but making it as broad as possible. Next page, what other comments do you have about ASD, the role of libraries in providing information about ASD or other related resources? Libraries and librarians are important. The overall role of libraries is to provide information and space to communities, whether that be through books, resources, or articles. All libraries, rural and urban, should have available or should have access to solid information on ASD for whomever needs the information. I believe it's professional librarians, I'm sure you would agree with that. Challenges for families. ASD is often misdiagnosed and children are labeled without parents having the information on the disability or where to turn for assistance. They need a resource for dealing with IEPs, doctors, social services, and the role of schools. Schools here provide few alternative classes for ASD students. They are either kept in special education classrooms with no instruction or put into regular classrooms with no hope to master the material due to their disability. This seems a school issue, not a library one. Our role should be to provide information and resources to guide parents. So there is some tension. And of course, librarians should not be providing medical advice or professional medical advice, but again, being a resource to that material. And then I have to wonder then about the partnership with schools. I know in the community that I live in, it does not seem that the public school systems are that well aligned with the public libraries. Rather silent. Limited resources. I want to note there were these 4 comments on the survey with regard to limited resources, and I think the survey response is approaching 400. But limited resources, of course, has been a comment. There have been comments about this over the past day and even this morning. We did not ask on the survey instrument any questions about resources, but it is certainly something that needs to be investigated. Important considerations at the bottom of page 3, and then moving on to page 4. Joel highlighted, when I have visited story times, it was evident that my children did not fit in and were not welcomed. But I would love a story centered around special needs children and their siblings. Kind of tugs at your heart. Leading practices, Joel actually highlighted each and every one of these and felt that there probably should be some group put together to focus on just this one area alone, so that you would spend some time taking a look at that. Is there any specific fear, worry, or concern that you have with this initiative for Illinois libraries providing community information on ASD? Really no concerns that were presented. Also, he asked that you look in the section on insufficient information abuse. It will be too complicated or too broad. Mission creep is implied by many of the questions on this survey. Yes, we need to do more. However, libraries are not the right place for every ASD-related service. One of the key things to the WayMark System's approach, and this is the research that Joel began at MIT as a faculty member there, is that we do take a snap of a static snap of the current situation, and we ask for alternatives for the future. Again, I talked about that wind farm that was proposed in Champaign County. The wind farm, again, had been talked about for 2 years among these 20 stakeholders. One of the alternatives that we provided, in addition to geothermal and smart grid and some other technologies, was a solar farm. Central Illinois, Champaign County, I would not have assumed that a solar farm would have been successful, but it was listed as an alternative. The University of Illinois is actually breaking ground on a 40-acre solar farm right now. And it wasn't even considered an option because we had been talking about wind turbines. Again, finish page 5. Moving on to page 6, no mandates. I don't want to be mandated to provide programming or activities for children. My programming options are open to anyone, regardless of ability. Being required to provide a service, potentially without allocating funding, is going to put a hardship on our library. I have no problem offering information, rooms to meet, notice boards, something with soft impact on the library staff and budget. I'm afraid this initiative will put the job of educating ASD children into libraries instead of on schools where it belongs. And then insufficient resources. Just below that, our library is staffed by 3 part-timers who work by themselves. Our yearly budget is $34,000, and extra funds and space are not available. Is that a reality for most communities? No additional funds available?
Yeah.
Misunderstanding. As I read this last one on that page, this looks as though it was actually answered by someone on the spectrum. And I worry that people will come to judge all of us by the symptoms some of us exhibit. It's called a spectrum disorder for a reason. The common complaint amongst my peers is that we need acceptance, not awareness. I also worry that more people will be fooled into supporting Autism Speaks and their campaign to eradicate us and with some of the unique talents and gifts we have to offer to the rest of our communities. Joel has asked this: if you all would continue amongst yourselves at the tables for several minutes. And we have actually plenty of time this morning because we are ahead of schedule. To begin to talk about the sort of the clusters of groups that you see, the types of working groups with which you feel should be formed to continue to move forward on this topic. So if you would take the time amongst your table to review these, discuss these, and then thoughtfully consider what working groups should be formed in order to address some of the issues that are expressed here, but also that were expressed in the quantitative data that you saw yesterday.